Hello, everybody. This is Ragini Anand. I wish you a good day wherever you are. Today is 13th of April 2021, and it's a very auspicious day. It's really the commencing of the Spring Festival, and many traditions celebrate this day as a new beginning. We have the Gudi Padwa tradition and the Ugadi celebrations, the Spring Navratri, and the start of Ramadan in the Islamic tradition. So there is something about this day which talks about new beginnings. In the Vedic tradition, which is what we are speaking of, it's a day when Rama was Lord Rama, the avatar of Vishnu. When he returned from Lanka after his victory, he is crowned, and the Gudi Padwa is really a flag hoisting celebration to commemorate that event. So it's very relevant that today we are speaking of one of the 8 topics that we are covering in Wheel of Life series, and today we are talking specifically about money, and it's the part 1 of the money segment. We have already covered such topics as personal growth, love and relationships, space and environment, and now we are beginning our journey with money. So before we commence, in the Vedic tradition, wealth is seen as a far wider definition. Money is just one small aspect of wealth, and if we were to really start unpacking it, then the difference between money and wealth is first to be understood. Money is simply a currency needed to exchange goods or services. But the idea of wealth is the abundance of money or material possessions or assets. So I want to talk about wealth really, and not money, because money is extremely limiting to the topic of today. So what is wealth is really what we want to focus on, and the definition is so wide in the Vedic tradition that it really takes us to the realms of thinking that we wouldn't otherwise go to. Now, Vedic tradition also celebrates wealth. Wealth is seen as something positive and not negative. It doesn't condemn wealth. It talks about, if you look at whether you're talking about Rama or Krishna or Buddha or any great avatar, they had reached the peak of wealth and money as a currency because they were all kings of their dynasties. And it's after they had got to that level were they able to become seekers or enhancers or causers of others' reality or enrichers. So if you look at it from that point of view, something tells us that, you have to reach the peak of your material climbing before you're willing to give it up and become a seeker. Now, Dr. Pillai, as a guru, really was the first guru to celebrate wealth and was able to correct my misconstrued understanding of what it was to be wealthy. I always associated wealth as something ugly, as something that made people rotten, and something that was really to be looked down upon at some times. And I had to correct that thinking, and we're going to talk about that thinking correction today because it's very critical adjustment of thought if we are to get rid of poverty consciousness and replace it with wealth consciousness. Now, even as a seeker, I found that if I didn't have wealth, it was going to be next to impossible to do what I wanted to do as a seeker. I wanted to be able to go on power spot trips. I wanted to be able to pay for very, very expensive training with Dr. Pillai. I wanted to do all the rituals that helped me break my karma patterns. All of that needed wealth. Wealth not only in my understanding mentally, but also physically having the wealth to be able to do all of that. So I want to talk about that adjustment of thinking today. Now, if we were to look at the deity that is responsible in the Vedic tradition for wealth, then that deity is Vishnu, the one of the trinity of gods. You have Shiva as seen as the destroyer, Vishnu as the maintainer, and Brahma as the creator. So there is this thing about maintaining that has to do with wealth. And if you look at the consort of Vishnu, it is the very embodiment of wealth. Goddess Lakshmi herself sits at the feet of the deity who is meant to maintain the universe. So what is this maintenance all about? And why would the goddess of material wealth, Lakshmi, sit at the feet of the Lord of maintenance? We will look at that a little deeply. Now let me just define what Lakshmi means. In any Vedic tradition, Lakshmi means wealth. But if you were to really translate the actual word, it means goal. Laksh means goal. To reach your goal is to be Lakshmi. When you reach your goal or your purpose in life, you have reached the ultimate wealth consciousness. So there is a concept, as I said, of maintaining our goal of abundance. That's properly maybe a better definition of what we're going to speak today. This concept of maintaining our goal of abundance is wealth. Now, if you were to look at the various breakdown, wealth is a much wider dimension than one imagines initially. It's far wider. So it has this idea of gold and money. Now, gold in the Vedic tradition is sacred. My guru says that it's a metal that is sacred. It's not just gold, but it is something to do with this sacred material, sacred element. So gold has been associated with money, and in the past, money was pegged to the amount of gold one had, and gold was very tradable. So that's one definition of wealth. But that's not where it stops. Another definition of wealth is having consciousness for wealth. How are you going to create wealth? Well, that's going to require know-how and knowledge. So you can also add in knowledge as an ingredient that goes into consisting what we call wealth. But without ambition, if you and I didn't have an ambition for wealth, desire for wealth, we wouldn't even seek wealth. So one could argue that having this idea of an ambition, your ambition is going to dictate your wealth. If my ambition is to be simply a barista in a coffee shop, that's going to be slightly different to having an ambition to be a fund manager. So the amount of ambition you have will also go on to dictating the amount of wealth consciousness that you will attract into your life. Also, another ingredient of wealth is intelligence. How intelligent are you in a positive way, in a pro-life way, to create your wealth? Are you able to see opportunities as they arise? That requires intelligence. That requires a certain amount of discernment. So intelligence is also an ingredient that goes on to making wealth. Now, what about morality? Morality is also an ingredient because you must be able to assess what is right behavior and what is wrong behavior, so that you don't get in your own way of creating wealth. So morality is an important ingredient. Another part of wealth would be strength. How strong are you to get up in the morning, to be energetic enough, to be intense enough to go out and create your wealth? Because wealth is not this sort of lazy concept that it's just going to come at you. A lot of New Age thinkers say, sit and manifest. Well, think and manifest. I don't think it's that easy. I've gone down that road, and it is boring to just, do nothing and attract wealth. You do want, there's this concept of strength and intensity that makes it exciting enough to, have a desire for wealth. Another ingredient would be being in bliss. So are you able to remain, unchanged on a daily basis? You're not fluctuating, from very depressed state to a very high, high, low. You want to be constant in your emotions. And that is also an ingredient that goes into wealth consciousness. Another ingredient is valor. What do we mean by valor? That you are able to have the courage in the face of danger to continue on your goal, laksh. Are you going to stay on the path? Are you not going to move out of your intention to attract wealth? Now here I'd like to relay a story of what a great heritage I come from. I'm very proud of my ancestors. And if I was to study all my ancestors, my maternal great-grandfather is probably the one that I most revere. Now he, in the 1930s, when even Japan was mainly closed to most outside world, he was able to somehow go from Mumbai to Japan, to Kobe in Japan. Not a word of English, as Japanese, sorry, not a word of English even. Not an idea of what the Japanese cuisine might be, not a clue about how to eat with chopsticks. Never had been on a boat. But here he was out to sell his ware to the world, and his wares were silk fabrics. And he took his idea, got to the shores of Kobe in 1930s, and I've been trying to investigate his story in Japan whenever I've been. I've got very close to getting to somebody who might have been connected to him, but unfortunately I haven't unearthed all his stories. But what an incredible act of valor and courage in the face of danger, to just stay on the path, on your intention for wealth consciousness, and go after it. So my great grandfather, Ashabhai Patel was his name, not only did he plant a whole orchard of mangoes in India, but he went on to Japan to sell silk clothes, and then also went to Durban in South Africa, sorry, not Durban, Johannesburg, to set up an operation there for selling clothes. Not a, I mean, incredible. When I think about his stories, I think I'm a wimp in comparison. And he also came to Manchester, which was in England, which was a hub for fabrics, and set up an operation there. So here was a man in the early 1900s keeping his intention for wealth, and he had generated enough income in his time to look after several generations. I think it's remarkable, not only because he amassed wealth, but his stories remain, how can I say, very life positive and very endearing and inspiring in my family circles. And another person of valor would be my father, who left the shores of Gujarat on a boat with 100 rupees to arrive in Uganda, in East Africa, which was so untamed and very unkempt and very, very needing of all sorts of work, to build railroads, to build orchards of coffee, to build. He got there at the ripe age, young age of, mid-20s to set up his operations there. So this thinking, this idea of wealth requires this important ingredient, which we call courage or valor, and it plays a big part in the dimensions of wealth consciousness. Another ingredient would be happiness. How happy are you in your environment, your family life, your environment will also dictate. If you're forever troubled in your inner space, lots of incomplete thinking, then if you're not happy, then you're not going to be able to create wealth or focus on your goals. One would say also beauty, it plays a part in it. And I don't mean this sort of flippantly. We don't have to be a sort of, a rock star beauty, perfectly turned out. But, being able to have enough kind of presence externally so that you're well turned up, well turned out, acceptable in society, will also have a play in your wealth consciousness. Your health, without saying, is also an ingredient. Your victory in the past, in your what you've been able to do or not do, is also going to play a part. Your longevity, are you going to, live long enough to see all your intentions, to come to fruition. And then fame, are people going to, transmit your knowledge or your reputation by word of mouth? How famous are you going to be for what it is that you bring to the table? And your family, is your family sort of balanced, and are they all comfortable so that you don't have issues with them? So I've named a lot of ingredients here that go on to this concept of maintaining your goal of abundance. So wealth is far wider as a subject than just what meets the eye. Most people would think wealth is just having loads of money and then retiring and playing golf all the time. Well, that would soon get boring, and that's not how the Vedic culture sees it. The Vedic culture sees it as a far wider, far bigger, far inclusive concept of all the facets of you working to its most maximum, most highest potential level, so that you can experience and enjoy and celebrate this life in the way in which we were designed to do. So I just wanted to make sure that we had a better understanding, or a Vedic understanding, of what wealth represents. Now, I wanted to touch a little bit on, there are these Lakshmis being goddesses of wealth, which are revered, which are worshipped to bring the consciousness of wealth into our psyche, of which there are 8 different types, 8 Lakshmis, Ashtalakshmi. Now, on a Friday, you would see me doing a puja with 8 different coins. And those 8 different coins represent 8 different aspects of wealth that I want to become conscious of. I want to bring in that consciousness into my psyche so that I can begin to attract it. Now remember, we've said elsewhere that what you cannot conceive, what you cannot perceive, you cannot conceive. So that is so true. If you cannot perceive something, if you cannot think it, how are you going to conceive it? How are you even going to make it happen? You're not. So these 8 Lakshmis are designed really to bring that perception into you so that you can begin to conceive aspects of wealth. Now the first Lakshmi, Adi Lakshmi, is the goddess of abundance. She is everything from 0 to infinity of what you can perceive as abundance. That Lakshmi is it, the sum total of wealth. Okay, so Adi Lakshmi. Now the second version is Dhana Lakshmi, or what we simply know as money and gold. Dhana means, wealth, money. So, but again, we said that it requires all these qualities. So when we worship Dhana Lakshmi, we bring in all these qualities we just mentioned: the inner strength, the valor, the talent, the willpower, the virtues, our personality, our character. All of those things is going to help us attract gold and money into our lives. When we worship Dhana Lakshmi, we become conscious of that, conscious of what we are lacking. Is it valor that we're lacking, like my great grandfather? Can we develop that? How can we develop that? How can we have the staying power? How can we have the right desire? What should our intention be? All of those things we become aware of when we worship Dhana Lakshmi. Now the third type of Lakshmi is Dhanya Lakshmi. She really represents nutrition in grains. Okay, so I see her as having two hands. One is that she is the agricultural herbal wealth. So when it comes to herbal medicine, it's her. When it comes to the food we ingest, it's her. When it comes to the quality of the food we ingest, i.e., that it can transform into great muscles and great bones, it is her that we need to worship. So she is this goddess of nutrients, minerals, vitamins. Okay, and she is Dhanya Lakshmi also is very much how many trees you own and plant. You become conscious of that. I want to leave trees that the next generation can enjoy, the planet can enjoy. So I want to become conscious of that. So on the one hand, she's agricultural wealth, but on the other hand, she's the nourishment health of human beings. We need the green wealth of our environment. And we don't mean green by money, we mean green meaning, the herbal wealth, the trees wealth, the wealth of all the fauna and flora is also Lakshmi. So that's the third Lakshmi. The fourth is the Gaja Lakshmi. When the oceans were churned, for the sea of all potential was churned, lots of resources came out of that churning, and lots of wealth, such as jewels and gems and all the things that can, grace us with abundance and royalty consciousness also came out of the oceans. But also what came out were human resources, what we call gunas, different qualities of human beings. Some people want to be nurses, thank God. Some people want to be doctors, thank God. Some people want to look after the resources of nature, in terms of forestry. All of this intelligence is controlled by Lakshmi. So it's such an incredible, Gaja Lakshmi is the Lakshmi with the two elephants, that you will have seen depicted. And she represents these amazing human and material resources of the earth. And we worship that. Then the fifth Lakshmi is the Sanatana Lakshmi. Now she represents family and progeny. So, are you going to give birth, if you are a couple, to the right kind of children who will continue to grow on your wealth rather than diminish it? Yeah, you can have, one, I'll give you an example of my great grandfather. He was one man who created enough wealth that could have lasted 7 generations. But the next 2 generations completely depleted that wealth and were not able to, keep the pots going. So that is also something that we need to become aware of and worship and emulate as a consciousness to bring into our lives, to have the right kind of framework in our family structures to evolve that thinking of not always depleting family wealth, but adding to it so that the wealth of the family is continuous and can sustain future generations. Now the sixth type of Lakshmi is the Veera Lakshmi. And Veera Lakshmi is very important because she gives us patience when there is adversity. Every life will go through a period when Lakshmi is not in their lives. Yes, when Lakshmi just leaves. I mean, I can give you examples of my own life. When we lived in Uganda, my father, I just spoke about, who left the shores of India to go to Africa, amassed a lot of wealth through this kind of conscious thinking of Lakshmi. But then a something outside his remit, which was the Ugandan exodus happened when the Asians were thrown out of Africa in the 1970s. My father was at the peak of his career at the age of 45, 48. I can't remember exactly what age he was. He had made his millions. He had coffee plantations. He had 500 workers. He had, factories making medicine. He had export business. He was at his peak of his career, and bang, something that happened that he had no control of. He left Uganda with one little suitcase, briefcase, with 6, believe it or not, whiskey glasses. Yes, cut glasses, what do you call them, crystal glasses. That's all he could think of bringing with him, taking with him, because I suppose he wanted to just drink himself, after such a demise of his, wealth, that's all he could think of at that time. But he built himself up again using this consciousness. So why I'm telling you that is that Veera Lakshmi is also something that we have to revere. She is also the consciousness that gives us the power to overcome loss of wealth, which is going to happen one day or another in all our lives, no matter how wealthy we are. So we go to her to give us strength and power and courage, how to overcome difficulties and bestow stability into our lives. And every Friday when I'm worshipping these 8 coins that represent 8 Lakshmis, I'm always saying to Veera Lakshmi, please give me the strength. Please, please don't make me so blasé that I think that, everything that's given is always going to be here. But even if I have a hut in a street, let my hut be the brightest, the warmest, the happiest. Whatever I'm given, let me always shine through that, is what we ask her. Now, the 7th type of Lakshmi is the Vidya Lakshmi, or the knowledge Lakshmi. This is, knowledge in yes, it could be education, but I don't revere the education we get at universities, etc., in the same way as somebody else might. I think that having good thinking, dharmic thinking, righteous thinking, is what I call knowledge. Aligning your thinking with the cosmic truths as opposed to the material world, which is transient. Aligning yourself with the higher truths is, to me, Vidya. Vidya meaning righteous thinking, dharmic thinking, where everybody wins, where you have the thinking that can unite rather than divide. That too is under the remit of Lakshmi, because it's a goal of life. It's something that is needed to maintain life. So Lakshmi sits at the feet of Vishnu, who's the maintainer, because the right thinking is an important aspect of dharmic life. And we know what goes wrong when we go away from dharma and adharma sips in. Then, Krishna, as he said again and again, he will be back again and again when that happens. When dharma is rooted out in favor of adharma, and Vishnu as a maintainer has to take birth as an avatar to fix it. Now, the last time that happened was Krishna had to come onto the earth plane, because the powers to be in Mahabharata had got so powerful. They weren't just going to take each other out as human beings. That would have been a fine thing. That's not a problem. But they were about to destroy Mother Earth herself. That's when Dharma has gone out of the window, and at that point, Vidya Lakshmi brings in an avatar such as Krishna to put that wrong right. So again, you worship Vidya Lakshmi for giving us that boon, to promising us that she will always make sure that Mother Earth is kept going. And finally, we have number 8, the 8th Lakshmi, Vijaya Lakshmi. She's victory in all aspects of life, little and large. Everything, the victory that you have from, winning over people, rooting out some of your patterns, clearing an inner space that is always conducive to good thinking and good being. All of this is victory. And you go to Mother Lakshmi to say, please give me sight of these small victories, that I'm always, 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 doing one little thing, one little victory at a time. Victory doesn't mean, loss of somebody's, somebody else's victory. I don't mean that kind of victory where somebody wins and you win and somebody loses. This is a victory with yourself. So all your negativities, having a victory over that, having a victory over your patterns, your lust patterns, your anger patterns, your poor thinking patterns. Let you have a victory daily so that you can go to Vijaya Lakshmi and thank her for that boon. So these 8 Lakshmis are extremely important aspects of consciousness or awareness. They allow us to kind of compartmentalize our goals in such a way that we can say, okay, what is my life goal? How am I going to compartmentalize that? And what is it that I need most of this week? Is it Vidya Lakshmi? Is it Veera Lakshmi? Is it Adi Lakshmi? What am I going after? It's that kind of internal conversation that you need to have daily, or weekly, I should say. I do it weekly because to me Friday represents Lakshmi. And goal setting, it's the end of the week. You're going to set your goals for the next week, because every day is a new beginning, but every week is a new beginning. Every season, as today, is a spring season, new beginning. Lakshmi is always at the start, along with Ganesha, to be worshipped when there is a new beginning, because we want to have goals when we have a new beginning. Every new year we have a new beginning. Well, what do the Vedic culture do? They become conscious of Lakshmi and Ganesha. Ganesha to remove all the obstacles which are karmic in nature, and Lakshmi for the dharmic bit. So karma out, dharma in, as I've said repeatedly, to engage in. So that's kind of the background of why this maintenance and why Lakshmi as deities, Vishnu and Lakshmi, they're there to focus on in terms of the expansion of consciousness that one needs to have. We're going to have somebody to emulate. Who are we going to emulate? We're going to emulate Vishnu, and we're going to emulate Mahalakshmi, in order to expand our own consciousness towards the goals that they've taught us to set. So now I'm going to go to a very important concept that my guru has certain edicts that he teaches, of which, I've already said Babaji, as I lovingly call him, or Dr. Pillai, is known as the wealth guru, and I started my career, seeking career with him, and he corrected my thinking, because I was very much a poverty consciousness person, because I had begun to revere poverty in some way. I thought poor people were definitely worth emulating. And then I had to correct my thinking And to cut a long story short, I'm now with my new guru, takes me to even yet another level of thinking. And one of his edicts is you don't manifest what you desire, you manifest what you believe or cognize or perceive. So that's a really big leap of thinking. People think that if you desire something, you will automatically manifest it. But that is not true. And what gets in the way of what you desire and what you perceive, what you believe, is your patterns, your mental blocks, your cognitions. So if you're going to think that poverty is something to revere and wealth is something to hate, you're going to have to flip that before you start attracting wealth. And I know this for a fact in my life. Do you know, I used to, before I met Dr. Pillai, my mantra, my belief internally was, it was never let me manifest wealth. It was always let me help those that are in poverty, that are needy. That was my mantra. I thought that was a great ambition to have. And do you know what rocked up? What rocked up in my life was boatloads full of needy people, including my own daughter. She became needy, like she needed help all the time. Now, I don't know how to explain this to you, but it's so real and so experiential that if your mantra is, somehow it's very arrogant, I want to help needy people. I don't even know where I picked up that thought from, quite honestly. But it was such a bad or a negative or it wasn't pro-life, it was negative to life, that it just attracted these sorts of people. The widow I was supporting after the tsunami, she just kept getting more and more needy. I would give her stacks of money, pay for her children for school, and every day I would have a letter saying, can I have more, can I have more, can I have more. And at some point I had to go back inside and review my own thinking. And I was thinking, why am I helping create these people in my life that have become reliant on begging? Why am I revering that? Why am I making that somehow glorified in my head? Why am I so arrogant that that's what I want to create? So thank goodness that Dr. Pillai came into my life just at the right time. He flipped that thinking. And my current guru is flipping it even more. Okay, wealthy people, we have this crazy idea that wealthy people exploit, they're bad and they're egoistic. But if you believe that, then you cannot possibly attract wealth, because your belief is going to get in the way of that. But what you find actually on the flip side is that if you revere poverty, poor people can sometimes be the most egoistic and most demanding. And I agree with my guru on this one, because I've had first-hand experience of that, where I have had a number of widows that I've supported, and no matter how much money I threw at them, they were never satisfied, and they felt that it was their God-given right to keep coming and begging. So I'm sorry if I offend anybody's thinking, but I really ask you to think deeply at what I'm saying and look at examples in your own life to see if what I'm saying makes some sense. So one of the things that we need to develop is will persistence. If we are going to be manifestors of wealth and want to create wealth in our life, then having a will persistence that never gives up on our intention and takes away these mental blocks that keep us on course and keeps us on our goal, on our lux, on our Lakshmi, on our thinking of Lakshmi, and become the field that then magnetically attracts that. Because thoughts do become words, words do become action, action does become life, and life becomes reality, as we said last week. And we have to drop this idea that poverty is somehow a great thing. The thing that is really not good is people accepting to live in poverty. That really is not a good thing. I'm not saying there are people who need help. I always believe that food and education should be given freely. But beyond that, we have to implant thinking that is life positive, that's going to get people out of poverty permanently. And the Vedic lifestyle was never poverty, really. If you go back before the invasions, Vedic culture was so contributing. It had the highest GDP of the world. There was so much wealth in the Vedic culture, in the 58 nations, 56 nations that was part of that culture. And, that's all been taken away, and now there is poverty. But why is it there? One needs to understand that. And the thoughts that have been implanted are probably more dangerous than the poverty itself. So wealth is not good per se, and it's not bad per se. It's a resource. It's a resource that allows you to do what you want to do. And it's a utility, and we mustn't shy away from it. We must revere wealth, revere people who create wealth and contribute, emulate it, because that's going to give us a reason to get out of bed and do something if we have a desire. I'm not saying once you have that wealth that you squander it away. You have to consciously use it to enrich others and cause their reality, help them up the rung of, living a pro-life, a positive life for themselves, rather than becoming reliant on you or on anybody else. So wealth is a huge topic. It's not just money, as the as the title of my introduction goes. Wealth is far, far more than money, and far, far more all-encompassing. That makes us into a fully fledged human being, operating on all cylinders. It allows us to flower at all levels of our consciousness. And for that reason, Lakshmi is revered in the Vedic tradition. Lakshmi is the most essential aspect of God that will allow us to maintain not only our own lives, but the life of this earth plane and the life of the cosmos. It's a maintaining object, a currency that allows us to maintain creation. So the thinking around that must be corrected, in my opinion. I've said enough today. I will now open up to any questions you may have, but I will leave you on this auspicious day which is all about new beginnings, and that in itself, that we've chosen this day to be here, is a miracle, magic, manifestation, the three M's, and it's a new beginning. Maybe it's a new beginning for all of you, whichever tradition you come from. It's certainly a new beginning as far as the earth plane is considered. I mean, I'm looking out and I can see beautiful white plum blossoms, which are indicating that there is a new beginning that is coming from the roots of the tree where the sustenance was, and it's now blooming in these beautiful blossoms. So there's something new afoot in the air, and I wish you lots of wealthy thoughts and wealthy ways of being and wealthy ways of creating your space. So, with that, I'll open up to any questions you may have.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can. Who am I speaking to?
My real name is Madison, but the lightness on the server.
Hello, Madison.
Thanks for speaking.
Yes.
Hello.
Hi.
So this is my personal experience and question. When I think of wealth in general and having more than I do now, the thing that hits me is that, and I know this is weird, I kind of feel like I have enough, and also that I like the challenge that, and I know this is weird, but like not poverty, but poverty-ness gives me. So, and I haven't explored this belief too much, but I've come upon it. So, what would you say to that?
Yeah. Okay, so you've had enough is the thing that needs to be underlined. So once you have become content with what you have created, with your wealth, then it's not abnormal. And I found this with myself, is that you want to begin to pare down. You want to go to another level of being able to exist with very little. The only trouble is that you will still need money to pare down. It depends how long you're able to sustain that, right? And to pare down will have its own challenges, both consciously and economically. And are you able to have the strength, the valor to keep going? That too is Lakshmi. That too is wealth, as we just discussed. So, getting the right context around how we see wealth is extremely important. And so if you've grown up in a very wealthy background, yes, you're satisfied now, just as Krishna was, or Buddha was, or Rama was. And they want to then go and explore other things. In your case, you want to maybe look at poverty. But others would look at their wealth and say, I want to now go and bring some people out of poverty, or I want to teach, or I want to do other things. But right now, from where you're standing, maybe the experience you're yearning to have, your goal is, how can I pare down and live with the minimum? That too is a goal. That too is going to test you. That too is going to require intelligence, right? All the things we spoke of doesn't go out of the window. I never said that wealth is just money. Yeah? And that was a
Yeah,
good
paring
reason.
down sounds really scary.
Sorry.
And by pare down, you mean like remove things one by one?
Well, I don't know what you mean. You said that, you want to experience the other side, right? Have I understood you correctly?
No, no, I'm not interested in being more poor at all. I just was wondering, it's almost like if I wake up in the morning and I need to scrounge to buy, this is just an example, need to scrounge to buy food for lunch. That's my challenge for the day. And that challenge makes me feel interested. And then when I get it, it's like, oh, I did it. Congratulations, me. And I feel like that whole mindset, while being interesting, also prevents me from being wealthier. But it's so there's like this strange balance between being content with, where I am and also realizing that there's the possibility of having much more. It's just that I don't know if I feel really any motivation to have more because I'm pretty content. So I think, and I just wanted you to speak to that. That's all. That's what I meant. Anyways.
No, that's a very good question. So first of all, I must thank you for asking it. I think that what you are juggling with is basically your perceptions. Yeah. So what I'm hearing on in one that you want to be challenged in some ways. What I'm hearing, but I'm also hearing that there are some well-established views of what wealth might entail. So there's a gap that's kind of present there between what you believe about wealth and what you want to experience. So that gap is what my guru would call pattern. It's a pattern. It's that pattern that you need to investigate. Why are you feeling that? Why are you feeling that you want to beg for the money to? And bhiksha, by the way, is a great technique in the Vedic culture for growing consciousness. When you can do it, you develop a language around the ability to beg in a conscious way. So there's a whole understanding of that whole thing. And maybe that's what your soul is wanting to explore at the moment. But not having a desire is a dangerous place to get into, because then you get into this sort of lazy state. You want to be able to experience life intensely, actively, at all times. So if something is dimming down your desire, that could be dangerous, because then you get into depression and anxiety and all of those states. So one of the things that you must ask for, if you somebody who can pray, is how do I kindle my desire, my ability to be in a state where I do have a goal, a desire, to remain wealthy as a human being. And wealth comes into it in many dimensions, not just money. Wealth will be all sorts of aspects, like we talked of, courage, all of the things we talked of. So I hope that answers you. But I think you're just experimenting, which is a good thing.
Yeah, that helps a lot. I really appreciate your answer. And I think today I'll explore my beliefs. And what really resonated when you said, sort of exploring my belief system, and kindling the desire. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Are there any more questions? I have some that I think I can read. Just 1 minute. How about being miserable inside and having wealth outside? I think adaptability and right time, right place weighs more heavy. Was there a front to that? What's inside? Sorry, I'm just having to. Yeah, so how about being miserable inside and having wealth outside? Yes, that is that's when wealth has become in some ways not the driving force. You have to readjust your your Lakshmi, your goal. Your goal is not wealth anymore. So how are you going to grow? What is going to make you grow? And if you're miserable, then are there patterns? Are there things that you need to come to closure with? That's what you may want to look at. And, don't spiral down because you're miserable in your wealth. Is there anything you can do? What I feel helps always is that when you have wealth and you start experiencing a quality of giving, when you start giving what you haven't got, okay, and in your case, it's miserable, you're saying inside. So how can you make others unmiserable inside? That's giving something that you haven't got yourself at the moment. How can you do that? And suddenly, if you can do that, you will have a value for yourself. You only experience having by giving. So if you want to get out of misery, the way you experience not having misery is by giving the opposite of that, creating happiness in others might be the way to look for something that you can do that would give you that, is how I would look at that. That's for Evo Dude. The next question is, miserable on the inside is an emotion, not a set of beliefs that reflects. She's talking about our inner belief system and how that matters. Yes, that's correct. The lightness, that is correct. The inner belief system. Are you looking at wealth in a negative way? In the case of Evo Dude, yes, it somehow is translating in your head as you being miserable, that you've got this wealth outside, and wealth has become equivalent to misery. And so that is the belief. How do you change that belief? How can wealth not be misery, and how can you change that belief is what you need to look at. Cosmic CID 145, my family has and continues to experience influences of Vera Lakshmi. Always knew the strength was coming from someone higher up. Yes. How can one intensify Vidya Lakshmi within oneself? Intensify it by becoming conscious of Lakshmi and her consciousness as Vidya. And remember, Vidya means knowledge, but not dharmic knowledge, powerful truths. How can you put yourself in front of unchallengeable truths? That's what you want to now explore, and intensifying learning those unchallengeable cosmic truths that then becomes your dharmic vidya. Vidya meaning knowledge that cannot be challenged by anybody. So I suggest you expand, putting yourself in front of the right literature, right masters, to have exposure to those cosmic truths. Also recommending Naval Ravikant's podcast for wealth creation. He speaks on how wealth is not a zero-sum game and makes it easier to bring more peace in this age. Yes, I don't know that particular podcast, but anybody who's helping in this area, I recommend that we take things from every place that it comes and wear it as a garland around our neck, because every thinking, whether it's right or wrong, you have to digest it and then make it your own. You have to have enough discernment to say, this sounds right for me, this doesn't sound right for me, and then wear it as a garland, make it your own. Parma Shivoham is saying, I request you to kindly accept my apology on behalf of everyone who kept you waiting. I'm sure the all-encompassing and all-pervading Brahman will forgive the Brahman. I enjoy you followed Dharma and started at the exact time like the sun god. Yes, I was wondering why there wasn't anybody around, but I continued anyhow, and we've recorded this. I've recorded it, and if you didn't manage to record it, then I will have a recording for you to place on your system. So with that, I think I've answered all the questions. Unless anybody has any more, I will take leave.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. I wish you a good day wherever you are, and I'll see you next week on the second part of this wealth topic. So, good night. Thank you. Thank you.